Hi, I'm Bethany Deyermond, and I'm here to talk to you about Margaret Olivia Slocum Sage, Mrs. Russel Sage. Why did she do so much for our village? Olivia was born in upstate New York in 1828. As a young girl, she loved visiting her grandparents, the John Germains, right here in Sag Harbor. Later, when she taught school in Philadelphia, she always remembered her time spent here very fondly with her family. In 1869, Olivia married an industrial tycoon named Russel Sage. He was a millionaire. She had a wonderful life and became a very wealthy woman when she inherited all of his estate after he died in 1906. After his death, Mrs. Sage decided to use lots of her money to help people in places in need. From 1907 to 1912, she was called Lady Bountiful of Sag Harbor. That's because she returned here and bought her grandparents' house. She also purchased and restored the Benjamin hunting estate, which is now the Whaling Museum. Mrs. Sage still loved Sag Harbor and wanted to do as much as she could for its residents, so she financed the building of Pearson High School, which is named for her mother's family, the John Germain Library, named for her grandfather, and Mashhashamua Park, which is a Native American word meaning at the place of big springs water. Also, she paid to repair the steeple of the old Whalers Church. She did so much for Sag Harbor. This is a photo of me dressed as Mrs. Russel Sage. It's Mrs. Sage's grandparents' house. Her mother was born right in this house. This is the Whaling Museum, where Mrs. Sage lived when she was doing all these projects all around Sag Harbor. This is the John Germain Library. Mrs. Sage had this built and named in honor of her grandfather in 1910. This is Pearson High School. When Mrs. Sage came back to live in Sag Harbor, the first thing she did was go and visit the Board of Trustees and ask them, what did Sag Harbor need? And everyone agreed they needed a high school. So she went ahead from 1907 to 1908 and financed the building of Pearson High School. This building was the school for the whole village from grades kindergarten through 12th. After Pearson was completed, Mrs. Sage decided to have a picnic, and she invited all the children, their parents, and the teachers, and they all marched down from the high school here to this land, this area, and they decided that Sag Harbor needed a playground. So Mrs. Sage bought the land. She bought the land around Otter Pond and made it into a park and a playground for all the children of Sag Harbor. The original flagpole here at the park was erected in honor of Mrs. Sage by the children of the community. They actually raised the funds themselves, saved their pennies, and had a flagpole put here. Many years later, the flagpole had been destroyed over time. We actually, at the Sag Harbor Elementary School, also raised funds again and erected this new pole. In the 1990s, this flagpole was placed because the one that was there had to be replaced. And the Sag Harbor Elementary School raised the funds, along with the park board, to build the new pole. And we had a ceremony here, and it was just wonderful. Now I hope you have a better understanding about Mrs. Sage, Lady Bountiful of Sag Harbor, and why we all should be so grateful for everything she gave us here, and how even now you're still enjoying what she gave us. These are 2 books. Anything about Sag Harbor that you want to know is in this book by Dorothy Zukowski. And this biography all about Mrs. Sage. You can purchase this book and the books that Deanna Latanzio shared about Annie Cooper Boyd at the website of the Sag Harbor Historical Society.